That's really messed up.
Okay, I have a number for you.
It's better. Well, just a minute, little one. Hi, Jeff. How's it going? Wow. It'd be really nice to actually be able to see something. Got to be the lens right about there.
Yeah, it is.
Hi, David.
It's dead center on the screen. Turn off some of the lights and see if it
Well,
helps.
I can't help that. I need lights for other stuff. It still is that. Okay, what's your number?
34 811 429. Faster than light.
Hi, Shaggy. How's it going? Let me see if I can clean that a little bit better there. We got some new hardware, but we haven't got it installed yet. See me. Oh. Everyone hear me okay? It's not horrible. Okay. Hey, Mr. Lodak. Oh. See if I can get this thing kind of set up right. Thank you, David. Oh, let's see what we got. Try this. Is it possible for people to see that whiteboard reasonably well? It looks to me like things are pretty small. We got a new camera and a new microphone over here. We haven't got them installed just yet. Oh, yeah, that far is not terribly far, but I'll see what I can do. I agree. It's got issues. Come on. This camera's so wide angle because I'm planning on doing more whiteboard work today than usual. So I want to make sure it's okay. That seems reasonable. Oh, anyhow. So as you've seen, we've been, hey, Mr. Virtue. We've been kind of busy this week. We also went down to Cardwell and helped out Jimmy for 3 days, which was good. Eva especially enjoyed it because Eva got to hold new babies. And I don't think there's anything on this universe that makes Eva happier than holding a baby. Perhaps I am wrong, but if so, I'm unaware of it. So she was very, very happy there. It was so nice to see the look on her face. Did some construction down there and was able to help Jimmy get some stuff done that's hard to do as a single person. Jimmy's pretty good at doing stuff himself. He's pretty impressive. But there are certain things that are just a lot easier to do if you got two people, especially when you're working on a scaffold or something like that where I can hand stuff up and he does things. It makes a big difference. So we were able to help him out quite a bit, and that was good. Hey, Rock, how's it going? And so, as I say, we had a good trip there. We came that close to getting the tank filled with this load.
Oh, man.
It'll be interesting to see when I pull open that.
I should have written it myself. I wanted you to put it below last week so people could see how much it's gone
Oh,
up.
well, we don't have the room
Okay.
to keep a pile of numbers on the whiteboard. But anyhow, so when I pulled apart the impact mill to take a look, I'd actually worn through the hard facing on some parts of the edges of the impactors. So I'm not sure. I reversed them as they're designed to do, but it'll be interesting to see how much more damage has been done to the rotor when I'm done here. We're definitely going to need a set of new impactors before we go on past this batch. I think my best bet is to go to Schluter Metal Art there and see what they would charge for certain things. I mean, it may be too expensive. I'll do it myself. It's that design is designed to simply take 2-inch bar stock, cut it, drill 2 holes. You now have an impactor. Pretty simple. That's because I'm pretty simple. And so we'll see what the price is. He's got a computer plasma cutter, and we'll see if it's a reasonable price. I'll just have him do it. May have to frolic up to Great Falls to to steel company to get. I don't want to use mild steel if I can avoid it. That's what the old ones were, mild steel with hard facing. I'd like to go to at least a T1, something like that. And those I don't know how hard they are to drill. So I got a lot of different things to check out right now. I just want to get that tank full. Once we get the last 200 pounds in that tank, then we're going to do a thorough clean out on the sluice, both by section and the remaining stuff in the sluice. I'm going to wash it all out, see how much is getting in the cracks and everything else like that. But I'm also going to try, when processing the heavies, I'll go ahead and pan the initial concentrates the way I've been doing. I'm saving all the other stuff. And then I'm going to classify it to 25 mesh, pan the oversized to see what gold above that might have been, captured that we didn't get somewhere else. I don't expect that to be very much, if any. And then I have a magnetic separator from Coulter Young Mining Magnets, and I intend to use that and see how well that works. And we're getting a lot of iron, but that's because the hard facing wore out. It was pretty obvious from the amount of steel in the sluice that wear rates had gone up. And so that's kind of what I suspected. But that's what I got to do in the next week or so, is get new impactors, because I won't be able to do much without it. On the bad news department, the samples I took from Montana B were not even potentially profitable, assuming that those assays were correct, and they were all fairly consistent. I had 3 different materials. One was the kryptonite in the vein, another was the softer material in the vein, and the third was the material that had dropped below that as I was making my breakthrough that I had screened to half-inch minus. So I had 3 samples. All of those were well below profitability. So my inclination is to take the 2 different samples of vein rock, 50% of each, and uh, put that into a bottle roll and roll it, because that goes from, I'm not sure how much Hiddle is doing, 15 gram or 30 gram samples, but basically, they're fairly small samples. By using a 500 gram sample and a bottle roll, you even out a lot of the statistics. How many samples of each fraction did you take, Keith? Not nearly as many as you would. Turn it back on, please. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot.
So, yeah, Rock, I'm on a much tighter budget. And you would not like the statistical significance that I have to deal with, but that's just part of the gig. So I had 3 samples. They were all pretty consistent. And so I'll take the 2 vein samples, 250 grams each, put them in a bottle roll, and let that run for a while, and then do a solution assay and see what that comes out. So all indications are at this point that Montana B is going to be mothballed for the foreseeable future. Then we go up to top of the hill. Not allowed to say publicly, Rock, but they were within 40% of each other, all 3 of them, and the values were less than a quarter of what we could possibly make a profit on at that scale, and those restraints.
If you had a whole mountain.
Yeah, if you had a whole mountain, it'd be great.
Yeah, you were big guys and you had a mountain.
Yeah. If you had 10 million tons of it, you'd be really happy, Rock. But anyhow, so I say that seems to be the situation at the present with Montana B. But I was kind of suspecting that the numbers, the actual gold we were getting and stuff was not adding up. When we do these big tanks, we would also take a sample and almost do we send each tank sample off for assay, or were we holding those after a while?
We were holding them after a while. We were doing that initially, but
the liquid samples?
We sent the liquid samples off for a lot longer than we did fire assay.
Okay. So yeah, I agree, Rock. As I say, it's one of those things that, there's gold there, but
silver.
How much is not, we don't know. The top of the hill batch that we did, first of all, top of the hill has a much higher percentage of silver than the Montana B. And it looks like, visually, that the sheet metal flap I've got covering the outlet to the tank, so that the piping just doesn't pack solid with sand during the agitation process. When I pulled it out, it looks substantially different than it has in the past, and I'm getting the feeling that it's basically plating silver onto the steel. And again, we'll be doing some more testing on that. If there was enough silver in the solution, we might set up a thing where we take a resin column and put some sort of cementation metal in there or a different resin. Entirely possible, Rock. It's pretty heavily mineralized in places up there. But anyhow, we're also, this is our second sample, tank at top of the hill. Currently, it appears that we're getting a little more, what you might call superconductor, but mostly gold concentrates from the gravity separation so far in our snifter bottle. So that is somewhat encouraging. The logistics are a bit easier in some ways, and it would be not physically difficult, although permitting might be a different story, to increase production significantly there. But we got a lot of interesting exploration to do at top of the hill. The gravity separation appears to be doing pretty well, the sluice box. Rock says at Ocampo, the workings at the top of the mountain were almost pure silver. Those at the bottom were 50-50 gold and silver.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Exactly, Brian. We shall see. Oh, and Brian, I have some interesting information from my analytical lab over here, vis-a-vis the glycine solutions. The glycine solution should not pose much of a problem for the analysis part, with the possible exception if there's too much glycine in it. It may tend to plug the very small orifices that are part of the device. It's atomizing the fine mist. Depending upon the concentrations of the target elements, that may be resolvable simply by dilution. If you got 200 parts per million gold, then he can dilute it, 10 to 1. No, actually, almost, he could do it 100 to 1 and still get good numbers on the target elements. But now the glycine is a much lower concentration, so it's easier to go through the thing. Yes, he did, Rock. If that did not resolve the problem in terms of the situation we're dealing with, he can digest it. I'm not sure exactly with what, but he's got chemicals that can, break down the glycine and then run it that way. That would be more expensive. So just letting you know that that's a reasonable method of analysis. In our particular case, if he can just throw it in the machine and get a number, it's $25. If he's got a digest, it's another $20 per sample. So we're checking that. And Rock, if you saw the video I put up this morning about dumping the tank, the color of the slurry was more like a yellowish tan. When looking at the rock, you can see the particular vugginess areas seem to be kind of a yellowish clay sort of material as a breakdown product, as opposed to the more iron oxide goethites. So I'm sure that's where the color is coming from, and that's why I'm guessing it's kind of a limonite, but it also seems to be there's some clayey stuff in there too. So That's like, we shall see what we shall see. Um, let's see. It's not sulfide at that point, Brian. Those are thoroughly oxidized. Something it could be sulfates, which is what iron sulfide oxidizes into iron sulfate and iron oxide and various combinations and permutations.
I don't think it's a sulfate
But
because there's no smell.
Sulfate,
Yeah,
not
sulfide.
sulfide. Totally different.
But they smell.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking is mainly limonite. There could be some other stuff in there too. You know how good a mineralogist I am. But anyhow, the general grind seems to be finer than that of the, uh, what do you call it? The Montana bee. I attribute that to using the bob mill instead of the Stutenroth mill. The Stutenroth, I was screening to, like 30 mesh sort of thing. And therefore, it's getting, the bob classifies entirely differently. And so it's getting a finer grind. It certainly was a lot easier to clean out the tank after dumping it. Uh, what else? We have a problem that will be easily rectified here. The materials that we collected, even the stuff from the second top of the hill thing, which was mainly rocks as opposed to soils or breakdown products, everything. I don't know, Rock. I'm not catching doodly in the um, impact mill itself. Now, I can easily, when I'm done with the run, set up a collection tub, open up the impact mill, set up a collection tub, have Eva watch that, and then back flush that air hose with water, wash it all back down, wash it out the impact mill. I was quite surprised at how little I was seeing in the impact mill.
Yeah, I'd like to know what's stuck in that.
So that would be a good thing to check, Rock. Thank you for mentioning that. It would be good to just clean everything to the nth and see where things are. But yeah, that would be pretty good. And that is what you would expect, but it's not what I'm currently observing. Yeah, but I'm trying to gather data at this point, Rock. I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to find out what's happening. So we'll see. The impact mill itself, I'm going to go to thicker impactors. I built it initially with 1/4 inch thick impactors. I'm going to go to at least 3/8 inch thick. It gives a couple of advantages. Number one, you get less heat distortion when you hard face, and number two, they'll last longer. The mill liners seem to be doing pretty good. Since I'm going to be hard facing, I'll go ahead and pull those out while I'm at it and hard face those while I'm doing my thing before I put them back in. There's very little wear. I made a couple of new wear plates to complete the interior lining last spring at Lauren's, which explains why the welding looks so much better, and did not hard face them because that would have required changing rod and this and that. And I ran them like that I can say that the rotor has vastly higher wear rates than the liner plates, especially the ones past the opening. Okay. The ones I just put in that were past the opening, man, it hardly looks like they've gotten anywhere at all. Just kind of rounded the corners on the bar stock, basically. Um, but we shall see. Um, that, let's say, the bob mill seems to be working fine. As you can see, someone as physically non-robust as Eva can easily feed it at speed. I mean, she's mainly standing around waiting for the bucket to empty before she grabs the next one. I am setting her up with preloaded buckets. Each one only has about 8 to 9 pounds in it, roughly. I'm just doing it. I'm weighing 25 pounds and then just splitting it into rough thirds.
I could do that myself.
Yeah, she probably could. But anyhow, so that just shows you how easy that part of the operation is. And what I'm doing is the jaw crushing and such. And even that she could probably do herself if she needed to. I am not familiar with that AAA, although it wasn't Baltimore, but there was another port in that area, Chesapeake Bay or whatever, where a ship was coming out last week and the engine got stuck at full throttle. Now, according to people who know such things, that the chances of it being like a hack or whatever are pretty remote, especially a remote hack, because those systems on those ships, 20-year-old freighters, do not have internet access. But anyhow, they managed to just basically call ahead, clear the channel out, and just drive it through. They decided it was more likely to cause a problem if they shut off the engine and lost steering than if they just went, balls to the wall and just did their job. They apparently called it fine. Nobody got hurt, no damage, with the exception of 2 people on a ship that they drove past, or a boat, got injured because of the wake. That was it. Hey, Kodak. So I'm unfamiliar with this report, AAA Beverages. What happened there, if you can give me a quickie? But anyhow, the bob mill seems to be doing what it's designed to do, getting a pretty good grind. However, we're getting enough organics, i.e. things like pine needles, leaf litter, stuff like that, in the material that it is plugging the inlet of the recirculation pump that I'm using for the sluice.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that later.
So I've got a bucket, already had holes drilled in it and stuff. I'm going to put a window screen in it and then just put that under the outfalls of the sluice, and it will catch all of that stuff so that it doesn't plug anything. So that, I think that'll be a simple fix. High confidence that no problem. So anyhow, that's kind of the update on what's happening with that. And we'll see, we'll of course do the videos on things. We had someone call this morning who was, I'm a little under the weather, Reg. I'm not sure whether I'm going to, last the whole thing, but not in horrible condition, but we'll see. Anyhow, called this morning and he said, I see there's a conical bottom tank with stand, 1,000-gallon tank nearby on Craigslist for $1,000. Should I buy it? And the answer is, that's a really good price. No, because you don't have an ore body that you have defined the extraction process for. Big mistake that a lot of people make, okay? And it's a natural thing, and that is they want to buy stuff. What are you talking about, huge, Rock? You mean the mistake? Yep. Thank you, Rick. And anyhow, yeah, exactly. You have no idea what equipment you're going to need to do your final separation. If you are confident you're going to do hard rock, or you want the capability, then you can go with the crushing equipment and pulverization equipment to some extent, first of all. Okay? And that is correct, Rock. It is not ore if you can't make a profit on it. Okay? So a lot of people spend money and effort buying equipment before they've identified the ore body. Now, in the case of us, Montana B looked like an ore body. We needed more data to find out, and we could get that data pretty much just as cheaply by mining it as by doing a lot of drilling, you know? And so we just did that because not only did it get us the information we needed, but it also allowed us to develop the equipment and procedures that we need. Me too, John, that we would need for most things. It's kind of general purpose stuff, okay? But leaching is different. Well, you'd love this stuff, top of the hill, because we got like this much fines, mostly gold, in the bottom of a snifter bottle. But anyhow, so to go leaching, you don't just need a leach tank, okay? You're going to need pulverization equipment. You're going to need a leach tank. You're going to need agitation equipment. You're going to need some way to get the leaching solution back away from the ore and then disposing of the ore. It's a lot more than a tank. It's not cheap, okay? People misunderstand that. It may be low cost to do. It's not low cost to set up for. So you need to test what works and what doesn't.
Yeah, and we did about a year worth of testing before we built that system.
Yeah, we got into this slowly over time. You know, we tested we started with a gravity separation. It wasn't working well. Then we spent $1,000 on advanced laboratory testing. Okay, that identified what our problem was. And then we spent time finding a leach lixiviant and testing it in bottle rolls, small scale, cheap. You know, the equipment to do that costs like $200. Now we've got some numbers like, okay, it works on a bottle roll. How do we do a tank? Then we started out with just totes. Hey, Alex, how's it going? And say you just scale up. Actually, before the totes, we went to a cement mixer. Okay, and
that was already hanging around.
Was already available. Then we did cement mixer batches. Those were 100-pound batches. Then we scaled up to totes.
It should be noted that at every step of this process, we did buy the cheapest thing we could find, or we used something that was already there.
Well, not only that, but at almost every stage, we ran into some sort of unexpected issue. Almost every single step. We're like, that didn't work exactly as planned. Sometimes it didn't work very closely at all as the planning. Other times, like, yeah, it's pretty darn close, you know? But things like going from the bottle roll to a cement mixer, not much real question. After that, it's like, hey, honey bunny, how do you get the gold out of the solution? That got pretty complicated. How do you get the gold out of the resin? That got pretty complicated. Okay. This is why you always do stuff small first. You know? Uh, okay, Rock. Um, so anyhow, that's how we avoided big mistakes. Likewise, on this sluice box thing, I'm using mats that I already had, a sluice channel that I already had. I spent, I think, 20, $30 on bar stock to hold the mats in, and about, I think it was $12 on the magnetic, um, what would you call it? Magnetic sign material, flexible stuff, whatever you'd call that. But anyhow, very low cost. Most of the stuff you see, that structure I built, that was all scrap lumber that was already available. You notice none of it looks real new. See how it works. Right now I'm in the process of moving the different mattings to different spots in the sluices to try and determine which matting does the best on which gold, and whether or not we should say, that's, we can do better without this mat at all, or this, that, or the other. What's the best sequence? All kinds of stuff, And so, as I say, we are a firm believer in testing and experimentation. When it comes to, I'm going to reiterate a few things, because we have some new people out there. Say, like this gentleman I was talking to not too long ago, this morning, who don't understand things really well. And part of that can be because they're getting it piecemeal and stuff. Okay, Alex. So the big difference between placer gold and hard rock gold is placer gold is almost always recoverable. As a matter of fact, I'm not aware of anyone who's using leaching to recover placer gold. If it was big enough to concentrate in a placer deposit, it's big enough to recover by gravity separation. Sometimes you got to be pretty sneaky about it, but it should work. You have to break up the soils, gravels, or whatever to free the gold, but that's usually fairly straightforward. It can be as simple as just screening it. You may have to trommel it or whatever. There's various things, but it all comes down to just breaking it up. On the other hand, hard rock gold, you require some kind of crushing on this kind of scales that someone like you or me is going to be aware of. It's going to have to be crushed and pulverized. Okay? You can't make money on low-grade stuff when you're this small, and you can't afford high losses with high-grade stuff. So you're going to want to crush and grind. So any kind of a hard rock mill, except for open pit heap leaching, even open pit heap leaching will usually have a crushing circuit. It may just be, cone gyratory and then cone crushing to 1.5 minus or something, but they're going to crush it because it'll improve the recoveries. Hard rock or high grade gold, yeah, you're going to crush it and pulverize it. Now, again, unless you're really big, you only have one choice, one reasonable choice as a primary crusher that I'm aware of. Although there's another one that from Australia that does a similar job with an oscillating thing. I don't call it a horizontal gyratory crusher, but anyhow, Essentially, it's a jaw crusher. The big boys use gyratory crushers, but then if you're doing your if you're doing your process 100 tons at a scoop, so essentially 100 tons at a bucket, yeah, a $20 million. I don't know what they are now,
I want one.
but a $20 million crusher makes a lot of sense if you can just dump your whole truck into it.
I want one.
Okay, so jaw crushers make the most sense. They've been around forever for a reason. They're simple, they're easy to maintain, and they will take rocks and turn them into gravel, no problem. Absolutely, John. Okay. It is more complicated, more expensive, more time consuming to get set up for. Absolutely. It makes perfect sense if you got uh, vein running 10 ounces per ton. Mazda rock crusher. What is a Mazda rock crusher, Mr. Virtue? And it may be something I haven't heard of, or just a kind of a generic term for something I have. Hey, Red Wing. But anyhow, your primary crusher is almost certainly going to be a jaw crusher. Then it gets complicated. Now you've got what they call fine comminution or pulverization. Okay. And these go two basic ways that I'm aware of. One are drum mills. Ball or rod mill is really good for medium to large operations. Absolutely. It's pretty much not, much to question there. On our scale, the impact mill has a number of possible benefits that make it a serious consideration. Number one, it's generally a lot smaller and lighter than a ball or rod mill of equal capacity, mobility, etc. Number two, they're generally cheaper in the small throughputs. Like the Stutenroth, call it nominally 5 ton per hour mill, which I'd say is probably safer to, at 1 or 2 tons per hour. Depends on whether you're talking about single pass or are you bringing it back and screening it and putting it back through. Are you running it wet? Are you running it dry? That sort of thing. But when you're talking in the couple tons an hour range, you really want to look at an impact mill. If you're looking at something in the hundreds of hour per range, for the price of mobility, there's really not much competition. Ball mills, rod mills do a great job of crushing rock efficiently in volume. They're a wet process in general. I have seen them run dry, but they're generally a wet process. The negatives are you're going to tend to pound the gold into flakes, which can be a positive or a negative, depending on whether you're doing gravity separation or if you're doing leaching. And they tend to be a gold trap. The gold has trouble making it out of the mill, okay, which is undesirable, obviously, unless, of course, you want to use it as a piggy bank that you break into from time to time when you need extra money. Impact mills, they're relatively high energy cost for the amount of comminution you're doing, but that's usually not a very big factor at our scale. They've got very high wear rates. You got high speeds. You got grinding at high speeds, and that wears stuff out. Too hard for cleanup. Generally, a ball mill is going to take a lot more effort to uh, uh, take apart and clean out and put back. With my mill, it takes 5 minutes, start to finish, back in operation. Okay. But these are the sort of things that, each individual circumstance is individual. You have to look at it. The wear rates are kind of inescapable. There's things you can do to minimize it. The Stutenroth mill does it through brute force. It has a half a ton of steel wear parts. It takes a while to wear them out. Okay. And as such, the impactors are not expensive. Last set we bought was pretty cheap. But Chris, your package is on the way. Should be there Wednesday. Okay. So, say your wear rates are fairly high. The other thing is you can design it like my mill for quick and easy refurbishment. The Studenroth isn't bad for what it's got. I mean, it's not horribly difficult to tear apart and put back together. Call it a couple hours, complete replacement of all the wear parts. Mine is, if you're replacing all the wear parts, probably about 45 minutes, you know. If you're just, and the rotor takes the most wear because it's moving fastest, and wear rates are much higher. So on my mill, the rotor's designed to have pretty easily reversible impactors. $406 or Chris or who? Hey, 406, how's it going? Well, we didn't make it last week, but we got plenty of other things to do. So after you got your thing taken care of, we'll figure it out. We're close enough. It's not that hard to do. But anyhow, so ease of maintenance is a lot better on an impact mill. Mine is specifically designed also to focus the wear in very small areas so that they can be hard faced easily. The hard facing lasts easily 10 times as long as steel does. Okay. So, and the hard facing is pretty cheap to replace, assuming you could weld. Okay. It's a pretty simple thing. Someone like 406 could do it in his sleep. You know, my impact mill 406 has 6 times 4, 6 times 12, 6 times 12, say 100 inches of hard face bead. How much would 100 inches of hard face bead cost to lay down, and how long would it take you to do it, 406? Because that's the difference between replacing the wear parts. And again, redoing the hard facing completely, if you keep up the hard facing, then your wear parts will last, probably 10 times longer than they would otherwise. Yeah, 406 professional welder in his past life. I don't know what he's doing right now, but I know he was a skilled professional welder. I'm just talking, just take the parts and put them on the table and weld it up. That's all I'm talking. And if I was to, the actual removal and replacement is maybe an hour for the mill, total thing. And then say you just got parts laying on your welding table. In most cases, yes, Chris, but when you got an impact mill, it's pretty well ground already. So I don't think you'd need too much grinding. You might need to, just make sure it's fairly clean. But again, you got really scrubbed steel there, and I say it's pretty clean metal. Um, but say you know it's not a very big job, and cost wise, I'm thinking I get at least 12 inches out of a rod, and each rod is less than $1. So I'm thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of materials, 10 to $20. Okay, what would your materials cost? 406 for again 100 inches of hard facing. Is it fair to say if you cannot make money shipping ore to a local bulk mill, then self processing will not be profitable? No, Gary, that is not necessarily true. It would depend on your cost of transportation. For example, if you had a mine situated where you could process it right there on site without a problem, saves a lot on transportation costs. And also, it depends on how much the mill is charging and whether or not they're honest. No, Kodak, tell me. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, 406. So I could refurbish all 8 liner plates and all 8 impactor plates for less than $50 if I did it myself. Apparently, you're correct, Chris. I say the guy at the post office said your package should be there on Wednesday, and don't laugh too much at how thoroughly packaged. That was the way the guy at the post office packaged it, and the whole bill was like $10. So I figured if it makes him happy, I'll go for it. I also threw in an MSDS just to make sure someone horribly awry, nobody would freak out. Gee, a white powder, what could that be? Yep. So anyhow, but those are some of the pluses and minuses of rod and ball mills versus impact mills. Rod and ball mills I'm not aware of anyone using an impact mill on anything big. Okay. I do not know of any because, again, ball and rod mills, energy efficient, low operating and maintenance cost per ton. And when you got big, deep pockets and a lot of tons to move, they work the best. When you've got shallow pockets and you need to move it all the time, size, weight, and cost become much more important. So this is what we got. Oh, let's see. 406. I need some wear parts made, and I prefer to have them out of like a T1 or something like that. But AR5. I need 2-inch by 3/8 inch bar stock, and then I got to have 2 half-inch holes in each one. I was thinking of taking them to the local guy with the computer plasma and seeing how much the price was there. But in your opinion, can you drill like a T1 or an AR500 with conventional drill bits and stuff without a problem, or is that something that's just you got to go computer plasma or else go to mild steel? Simply unfamiliar. Certainly having somebody else do it with a computer plasma cutter is a lot easier. Uh, but so I was planning on going out there and uh, getting the price on that, seeing what the deal is. We may get to run up to Great Falls to go get some steel, little one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, really? Yep.
Silver shopping. And Smith's.
Yep. Well, the fire, wax will get fires going real good, honey bunny. Roto broaching. I presume that means drilling a small hole and then step enlarging it. Rough finish isn't that. I mean, we want parts that, first of all, have a pretty good. Okay, Chris, for a half-inch hole. Um, say we've had, we have these parts. Well, for example, the perimeter impactors on that are, I think, 5.5-inch long pieces of bar stock with two holes in them. And if they're, cattywampus or whatever, it's going to throw out the balance and a few other things. So you want reasonably precise. It doesn't have to be super, but you need the holes to line up enough to get the bolts through. So, you'd want something essentially probably less than a 9/16 hole, properly centered, in order to make it work pretty well. Okay. Hey, Secret Creek. I say, I don't know, but it's the sort of thing that I got to check with the steel company, check with the plasma guy. Got a lot of stuff to do over the next week once I get that tank full. And the other thing that you have to be careful of is while you may have your impactors last, that doesn't mean the nuts and bolts that hold them on. They wear out over a certain period of time too. So you have to consider that. I mean, on a bigger mill might go with drilled and tapped holes so that the front of the impactor is flush, and as it wears back, the bolt will wear back, but you don't have to worry about wearing the nut off of the bolt. I usually put the nuts ahead because that way I can usually reuse the bolts, So that's the deal there. Now, when we're getting back to the actual processing stuff, once you've pulverized the rock, now you got to get the gold away from the rock. And again, I'm covering that. I know a lot of people know this, but some are newbies. In order to get the gold away from the rock, if you're using a gravity separation, a flotation, amalgamation, something like that, is that you have to break the gold away from the rock, okay? Which is basically you got to grind it fine enough to where they're two separate particles. And so you just got to grind it more and more, depending upon what you're trying to do. On the other hand, if you're going to be leaching, then you can get away with a little less grinding, everything else being equal, because all you have to do is get the gold particle on the surface of a rock particle. Okay? These things are very much ore dependent. Everything is ore dependent or rock dependent. Rock butcher. There is no rule of thumb that works. However, one rule of thumb that always works is the coarser the gold, the easier it is to gravity, and the finer the gold, the easier it is to leach. Hey, Jean-Francois, did you see the video I put up this morning on dumping the tank? Oh, you're going to want to watch it. There's a little comment there. I think you'll get a good laugh from. I sure as heck did. About drilling in very hard steel. So I know computer control plasma will handle it no problem at all. But anyhow. Well, we're drilling half-inch holes. Oh, carbide contour drill. Okay. Yeah, that would work. I've used carbide masonry bits to drill hard steel before too. Yeah, I can see how that would work, especially if you got a good pilot hole started first. Okay, Rock, take care. Thanks for showing up.
Good night, Rock.
Yeah. With a positive rake angle. Okay, that means, looking at the bottom of your screen, it's coming across the material like this. What's the rake angle for a high-speed steel about? Gosh, as I recall, about 70 degrees or something? 60? Whatever. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, Jean-Francois. Yep. Thank you for reminding me. So, anyhow, I got to get on that here. Yeah, exactly, Jean-Francois. It's designed for being pounded in like a chisel, like a cold steel chisel or a cold chisel as opposed to a wood chisel. Exactly. Let me get a drink of water here. I'm getting a little thirsty.
Oh. There are now reports of a rogue Russian submarine being hunted off the coast of Florida.
Not rogue. They're deliberately.
I didn't say I agreed.
Yep.
And I didn't say it was confirmed.
Yep.
Oh, and the animal that killed that 3-year-old boy in Ohio?
No idea.
Got sentenced today. She was laughing in court.
Yep.
Very happy with her. So.
Anyhow, yeah, I would agree, Chris. Either that or a drill press. Yeah. Anyhow, so because gravity works best on coarse gold, leaching works best on fine gold, and rock usually has some of each. This is why you don't have a rule of thumb. Relatively few gold ores have high recoveries using just a gravity separation. If you're doing a leaching circuit, you're going to be losing some of the gold that's just too big to dissolve in the time that you're retaining your pulp in the circuit. This is why I've got that hybrid circuit going. While the gravity circuit, that sluice, is pretty crude. With the fine grind of the original material and by shallowing it out and basically running it kind of gentle, I appear to be getting pretty high recoveries on the 400 mesh plus gold, maybe even 500 mesh plus. Okay. I'm doing more testing to find out. But anything under 500 mesh, the Eco Goldex will dissolve easily in less than a week. Previous tests we did were like 100 mesh particles, took about a week to dissolve. Okay, just sitting in a beaker, so to speak. So by using a hybrid circuit, we can use gravity for what it's good at. Take care, Jean-Francois. Good luck. And then the leaching will get the rest. Okay? That appears to be a pretty good idea. We shall see what we shall see. Okay? Again, test, test, test. Well, yes, 406. I don't have a superlative way of making a real precision fine silicone sluice mat. However, my primary mat that I'm running is basically a sawtooth silicone mat that I've made by taking an old piece of mud flap, spreading silicone on it, and then taking a putty knife that I cut sawtooth pattern in, and then just going horizontally. It seems to be working pretty good. Surprisingly good. The Gold Hog mat's not silicone. The stuff from Devon Gold is a VDR. It's a vortex drop riffle. So you got a row of vortices and then a drop riffle and then a row of vortices and like that. And I'm not sure what the actual material is. It seems to me to be stiffer than the standard silicone. Okay. The silicone stuff I'm used to, but it could easily be some sort of silicone that's just a little stiffer. Okay. And so if you got any kind of a pattern that you'd like me to try against Real Fine Gold 406, make me some 8 inches wide and I'll give it a shot. Okay. But again, I'm only going for fine gold. About the biggest particles I've seen are in the neighborhood of roughly 40, 50 mesh. Those are the biggest things I see. And the problem with an actual carriage bolt honey bunny is you need a square to hold it. They have some pretty hard countersunk Allen screws that you can use. 8 inches wide. Okay. That's what my sluice is. It's 8 inches wide. And so I can just drop a piece of 8-inch. I'm sure you could, but I just like to put an all metal locking nut on the other side, tighten it down, Yep. I can see why, honey bunny. But so, as I say, if you want to try something and see how it works on real fine gold and a real fine matrix, I'd be happy to give it a shot. Okay. But that's what I need 8 inches wide to fit in my sluice. Sorry, folks, I'm a little bit off tonight. I've been feeling peakedy since yesterday, but such is life. The other thing, 406, is after running through the impact mill, most of my precious metals are in little balls. you know. Some are in the neighborhood of 3 foot long, which should be fine, you know. So um, that that would be a good test mat, I think. Oh,
Wow, you really out of it there.
yeah. So anyhow, I say I'm a bit peakedy today. Only one left or right. Okay, that right over my head, John. Uh, so that's kind of basically what's happening in some basic mill. That would be singular, John. Yeah, no, they really seem to do a great job of gravity concentration. That's another thing that your um, impact mill will do that your ball mill will not. You know, is that it's okay, John. Now I got it. Told you I'm out of it. Um, the balls, the little teeny micro balls, seem to really work in terms of gravity separation. So that can also potentially be an advantage of the impact mill versus a ball mill. Um, I would say a ball mill, if you're going for a pure leaching circuit and you don't have much in the way of coarse gold, which is why you would be going to a pure leaching circuit, and you're doing a reasonable amount of throughput, yeah, I would think a ball mill would make a lot of sense. If you got coarse gold and you're doing gravity, yeah, I'd be, in small throughputs, might go with the impact mill. Dude, I'm 68. I'm a geezer. Oh. So, anyhow, does anyone have any questions or anything? Okay, Lars, I can understand that. Yeah, a whole 3 years ahead of me. Just wait, I'll catch up sooner or later. Well, maybe I won't. That's true. Yeah. So, anyhow, as if anyone has any questions or clarifications on anything or whatever, um, yeah, but you're a better mechanic than I am, Lars. Um, Now would be a good time to ask. I'm kind of fading a little bit, and Eva should be here with her. I think possibly so, honey bunny. Once Eva gets done with her um, tinfoil hat report, I'm not sure how much energy I'm going to have left. Uh, oh, oh. I am surprised at how well that sluice seems to be working. As Chris has pointed out, it's far from ideal in a number of ways. Oh, I will, Chris. I slept in late this morning. No alarm. I have no alarm tomorrow morning. I don't know if it's because I spent a lot of time in the sun last week, 3 days of doing sheathing, and then followed it with afternoon out at the mill, or whether I just ate something that didn't quite agree with me or whatever. I'm not sure what, but I feel peaked. Of course, the last couple of months I've been feeling a little bit out of sorts. I would imagine it depends on the truck, Lars. See what? Could be, Chris. I'm not sure. But also, my diet was a little bit odd because I was over at um, Jimmy's house. They always cook good food, but it tends to be higher carb than I'm used to. So it's hard to tell. But I tell you what, seeing the look on Eva's face when she was holding one of those little babies, that was priceless, man. Oh, does she love little babies? And they're only about 6 pounds. And
5.5 pounds.
yeah, why? Absolutely, Lars, because I sluiced it before I put it in the tank. Absolutely. I I know there was enough gravity gold in that stuff that it made sense. Initial 70-pound test with a much smaller sluice indicated roughly 50% recovery by gravity alone. And with that kind of recovery, might as well put a gravity. But that's why I had to build that structure to get the height for a sluice into the tank. Any other questions here before Eva takes over? Uh, I can tell you there's not going to be sign language interpretation tonight. I'm going to be laying down while she's chatting.
Oh, I see how you are. Flaking off.
Pretty much.
Not doing your job.
Pretty much. That's
Going
right.
Straight.
I'm the internationally famous expert.
And you would be nowhere had I not gotten you out of the dang kettle corn and living your life. So behave with your bad self. Move.
Yeah, she's right. As usual.
Drink your Ketoade and be quiet. Hi, everybody. We had an excellent several days helping Jimmy, and those babies are so cute. I get to make baby blankets. Hi, David. Hi, Chris. Hi, Kodak. Hi, everybody. Hi, 406. So, we've had actually a pretty interesting news week. Let's see what's going on this week. Well, apparently they've been having a whole bunch of elections over in Europe, and extreme right-wing people are winning them all. This is upsetting people for some bizarre and unaccountable reason. England is going to be having their elections on the 4th of July. And quite frankly, the goddess has been watching this one with a lot of interest because there's far more fragmentation going on than you usually see. They have a lot more people running than they usually have in the various parties. They have about 87 and a half parties over there. Very difficult to keep track of. However, it is interesting to note a whole lot of people who used to vote Labor are now planning on voting Reform or, heaven forbid, Tory. Yeah, Tory. Believe it or not, it might have something to do with the fact that Labor has decided that women don't exist. That seems to have pissed off about 50% of the population for some bizarre and unaccountable reason. We shall see what we shall saw in that regard. It should also be noted that France had some sort of an election because Macron had to dissolve his parliament. They're planning,
European parliamentary election.
The European parliamentary elections happened and went massively right wing. And Macron is dissolving his parliament over there in France, and they're going to be having elections. So there's going to be a whole lot of political shakeup going on, which might actually result in action. And I know you may not believe this, and I hope you're sitting down. The United States has a men's cricket team. Cricket, that weird sport with the flat paddle and the bowler and and the round field and all that, we have a cricket team. Not only do we have a cricket team, we have shocked the sporting world because our cricket team is in good position now to make it to the Super 8. You see, they had this thing last week in the World Cricket Playoffs, and we pulled a miracle out of our butt and beat Pakistan or somebody like that. And everybody was like, what the fuck? Because let's face it, cricket is not a sport you normally associate with the United States of America. However, we may well end up at least making it to the Super 8, and we may shock the world and actually continue to do well in cricket. Very, very strange. Just very, very strange. And Biden, the one in office, not the one in court right now, Lord Malarkey went to Europe. He went to France for D-Day. He plagiarized Ronald Reagan's 1984 D-Day speech. But that's okay because Karine Jean-Pierre said it wasn't plagiarism. He just copied it. So, just so you know, that is not plagiarism. That's only copying. He also tried to sit down in a chair that was 5 or 6 feet behind him. And then Dr. Jill dragged him off stage before he even greeted the veterans. And the look on Emmanuel Macron's face was something else when he just kind of completely panicked, picked his jaw up off the floor, and went and shook hands with our veterans. It was. Mm, no, can't say that. It was illuminating. That's the best word right there. Just saying. It was illuminating. Meanwhile, in the mining world, Nevada Copper is filing for bankruptcy and names a new top boss. This may or may not be an incident, but let's see here. Basically, they filed for bankruptcy protection under Chapter 11. They're kicking off a restructuring process. But I think with what we're seeing in terms of inflation, rising fuel costs, problems with labor management, etc., we may start seeing more reorganization. The the goddess is more worried about what's going on down in Mexico because, of course, Mexico has a new president, and their new president is uh, going to be problematic. Let's just put it that way. We shall see how problematic at some point in the future. Meanwhile, things are not going to be going too well in copper in general because while the prices are higher than we have seen in a while, with if you look at inflation adjusted constant dollars, things are looking a little stagnant at the moment. Of course, we all know the economy is in historically good shape, so it couldn't possibly be that. But we have several geopolitical issues that are rearing their ugly heads in South America and in Africa. We have issues with Pandaland um, playing fast and loose with regulations in various places. We have governments beginning to get quite predatory, and we have prices not reaching the point of discovery. So pressure is going to be coming at copper from all directions. And one of the things we got going on, Codelco copper output hit by lingering effects of rock collapse. Codelco attributed a sharp drop in production at its top mine to the lingering effects of a rock collapse last year, as the world's number one copper supplier strives to reverse slumping output. The situation was foreseen in annual planning and does not affect the committed production budget, the state owned company said in a written response to questions about the massive El Teniente mine. El Teniente's first half production is tracking lower than the same period last year as it repairs areas of the underground operation affected by the collapse last June. It's one of the setbacks at mines and projects that have seen Codelco's annual output reach the lowest levels in a quarter century, with Chairman Maximo Pacheco vowing last week a recovery will begin in the second half. The El Teniente mine saw production plunge 32% in April from a year ago, according to data compiled by Chile's State Copper Commission, Cochilco. That was the major factor behind Codelco's worst monthly in at least 3 years, the data shows. As the goddess said, this is not going to be the last we see of such little hiccups because right now all of our mining industry is beginning to come under strain. So things like this are going to have an outsized impact. And in case you missed it, we had a jobs report. It was a thrilling work of fiction. Absolutely thrilling. We added 272,000 new jobs. Woohoo! But at the same time, the unemployment rate went up by 1.5%. And when you dug a little deeper into the figures, you found out that not only were all those jobs part-time jobs, we also lost somewhere along the way almost 500,000 full-time jobs. Even stranger, when you really dug into the Bureau of Labor and Statistics records, well, for some bizarre and unaccountable reason, it turns out that almost 3/4 of the jobs that have been logged in the last year went to people who are not born in the United States. As a matter of fact, from the look of it, it looks like closer to 90% of the jobs that showed up out of the blue in the last year went to non-native citizens. Interesting statistic that. One has to wonder. I wonder how it's related to that statistic that somehow almost 20% of the hotels in New York City are fully booked by the government to house migrants. I'm sure those things are not related in the least. Oh, and don't bother looking at pictures of what's going on in Logan Airport lately. I wouldn't advise anyone who's planning to go to Boston to fly into Logan Airport, as a matter of fact. It's looking a little bit bad. Just saying. And I say that as a former citizen of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The goddess is not pleased with what's going on in her former home state, but then again, what can you expect? Credit card spending sagged again in April, suggesting American consumers are tapped out. Well, gee, no shit, Sherlock. Not only tapped out, have you taken a look at what they're calling good interest rates for people with stellar credit these days? I've seen some shocking numbers in that regard lately. American consumers kept their credit cards in their pockets for the second straight month in April. Oh dear. A bad sign for the economy that has run on plastic for the last year. Yeah. After cratering in March, revolving credit contracted in April. Meanwhile, non revolving credit continued to grow at a tepid rate, a trend we've seen for well over a year. Both of these data points, along with a crash in the retail sales in April and slowing GDP growth, signal the American consumer may well be tapped out. Oh, really? How bizarre. Overall, consumer debt grew by 6.4 billion with a B in April, a 1.5% annual increase according to the latest data from the Federal Reserve. Americans now owe $5.05 trillion with a T in consumer debt. The Federal Reserve consumer debt figures include credit card debt, student loans, auto loans, but do not factor in mortgage debt. When you include mortgages, U.S. households are buried under a record level of debt. As of the end of 2023, total household debt stood at $17.5 trillion with a T dollars. About half that number. That's going to be problematic. Pundits and politicians have talked up the robust economy and the resilient American consumer for months. But this economic growth was brought to you by Visa and MasterCard. They forgot to discover an American Express there. Now it appears Americans might have maxed out their credit cards, or they're at least feeling the strain of sky-high interest rates. Revolving debt, primarily reflecting credit card balances, contracted by $500 million in April, a 0.4% decline. Even with a slight decline in revolving debt, Americans still owe $1.34 trillion with a T. The double whammy of rising debt and interest rates exacerbates the debt problem. Average credit card interest rates eclipsed the previous record high of 17.87% months ago. Funny how close that is to the real inflation rate. I'm sure that's just coincidental. The average annual percentage rate currently stands at 20.68%, with some companies charging as high as 28%. This is one of the problems confronting the Federal Reserve. Even though inflation remains sticky, the central bank needs to ease interest rates before they bury debt-laden American consumers. Consumer debt is also putting a strain on banks. The net charge-off rate on credit card loans came in at 4.15% as of the end of 2023. It was the highest rate for this portfolio reported by the banking industry since the first quarter of 2012. Really now. All of this underscores the fundamental problem of running an economy on credit cards. It's expensive, and they have an inconvenient thing called a limit. Well, and it appears American consumers may be at that limit. Ooh. That could be part of the reason GDP growth unexpectedly fell in the first quarter. Oh, we have a lot to unpack on this one. The growth in non-revolving debt also reveals problems in America's borrow and spend paradise. Non-revolving debt, primarily reflecting outstanding auto loans, student loans, and loans for other big-ticket durable goods, increased by 2.2%. The March number was revised down to a contraction of 0.9%. This continues a trend of sagging spending on big-ticket items we've seen in recent months. Before the pandemic, revolving credit growth averaged 5%. This plunge in spending was inevitable. The post-pandemic economic rally was never sustainable. As prices skyrocketed last year, Americans blew through their savings to make ends meet. Aggregate savings peaked at $2.1 trillion with a T in August 2021. As of June 2023, the San Francisco Fed estimated aggregate savings had dropped to $190 billion with a B. Let's take a look at those two numbers. 2.1 trillion with a T. Now 190 billion with a B. Wow. That's a lot. In other words, Americans ran through 1.9 trillion in savings in just 2 years. Really? And then they turned to credit cards. Now that they've apparently maxed out the credit cards, what happens? There's your question. There's the number. Hello, everybody. So, this past week in Mordor on the Potomac, they cranked out the latest fiction reports on the state of the American economy. And people are already questioning how it is that you can have unemployment go up by 1.5% when you create 272,000 jobs. People are also already questioning how losing 400,000 full-time jobs and creating primarily part-time jobs. And also, by the way, the majority of job creation is still in the federal sector. You know, got bureaucrats, federal, state, local bureaucrats. Makes any sense? People are really questioning how it is that so many of these jobs apparently are going to non citizens or non Native Americans, at least, first generation immigrants, since we have not had that many first generation immigrants come into the country lately. A person kind of has to wonder about that. There's a whole lot of things we have to wonder about. And it's been a matter of discussion on the platform formerly known as Twitter, because we have been discussing the fact that, contrary to popular belief, most people don't seem to be doing very well. Funny how that is, isn't it? Meanwhile, in the gold and silver world, everybody got excited, as is a good thing, when gold and silver had a really good week. Okay? And the goddess will be the first to admit gold and silver had a really good week. It should be noted that yeah, the numbers are fake. That doesn't mean the numbers don't look really freaking cool, you know? It should also be noted that there were times in the last week when the spread between Shanghai and here was topping 13.5%. A couple of times it hit 14%, which is really bizarre because the actual physical metals are moving that way. They're not staying here and they're not going in Americans' pockets. They're moving to Asia. Currently, live spot gold $2,307 and silver $29.38. Now, despite these numbers, the goddess believes that the technical floor with the strongest support for gold right now is around 23.50, and the technical floor with the strongest support for silver is around $30 and $30.10, $30.20. What we're going to be seeing a whole lot more of is what's been happening in the last week. These wide swings in prices. When the manipulators like JP Morgan and Bank of America and HSBC have their ducks in a row and they have everything under control, the spread, that nice little narrow corridor, stays nice little and narrow. You know, silver may go up 30 cents and then it comes down 40 cents. It may go up 30 cents. Gold may go up $10 or $30 and then it comes down and then it goes up in that very, very narrow trading range where they like to keep it controlled so they can play all the paper games they want and have fun and still come out ahead. Okay? They're beginning to lose control of this scenario, which is quite interesting to see because those spreads are getting a whole lot wider than they were. Now, a few things we can expect here. Base metals are, by and large, following silver and gold. They're just lagging a little bit. So we can expect base metals will start moving their way up. Copper is definitely going to start moving quite strongly on the way up and may establish a few new floors. It may beat the actual constant dollar high that it had back in about the mid 1950s at the rate it's going. Because we need copper for the great green bullshit that's going on. Okay? So there is that to be watched here. The more important thing to be watched is what's happening to your money? What's happening to your currency? All money is currency. Not all currency is money. What this rising price means is less faith in the US dollar. Because what you're looking at when you're looking at this price, $2,307 flat, or $29.42, what you're looking at is an exchange rate between two currencies. Like if I decided to go visit Canada and I wanted to exchange my dollars for Canadian money, I'd be doing a currency exchange. And depending on how people feel about Canada money at the moment and how Canada feels about US money at the moment, that's going to determine whether I have a great shopping trip because my US dollar is worth a hell of a lot more than their crap money, or I have a crappy shopping trip because their money is worth a whole lot more than ours. That's what these prices mean in essence. As we see these prices rise, we are seeing more and more erosion in the buying power of US debt notes. That is not real money. We are seeing more and more erosion in the confidence. And quite frankly, with everything going on in the world right now, I don't blame the world for not being confident. Excuse me? I mean, really now? Hello? You know? Prairie prospecting, it's not like ours is much better, okay? Yeah, Alex. And they will. They're going to go up and down like crazy for a while. I think when it comes to the base metals like nickel and lithium, part of the problem there is the whole business with batteries. Everybody went on the great EV craze and everybody went way overboard producing nickel and lithium, opening up nickel and lithium properties, borrowing 20 tons of money to get ready to make a killing in nickel and lithium. And these batteries have been spontaneously combusting, and they discovered that your average citizen, well, since it's a little hard to put the hamburger helper on the table these days, it's not like we're all going to be going around buying EVs. Not happening. And you're going to see some of that in copper as well, because, again, there's no when people look at the reality of the situation, it doesn't look as rosy as these doofus people are making it out to be. Nobody is going to go out and buy an EV when they can't afford one. When in many places you can't get them insured, or the insurance is 2 or 3 times as much because they're unsafe. You don't have any place to charge it. They're an ecological disaster, but that never mattered to the great green bullshit crowd anyway. You know, one of the things we will see, and it's something that the goddess is beginning to pay a lot more attention to, as we get closer to price discovery, actual discovery, where people begin to buy and sell metals for what they are truly worth, and people realize just how bad off the fiat debt based economy is, I think we're going to see a serious boom in recycling technology specifically. Because as it stands right now, the eco crucifixes, those huge wind turbines, they can't be recycled. They get buried in landfills and ignored. Solar panels, full of all kinds of exotic crap that is very hard to deal with, and a lot of it is kind of very toxic to deal with as well. At some point, the things in them will become valuable enough that there will be a strong incentive to mine a new thing that we are creating right now in every city and town across the country: sanitary landfill. The goddess personally would love to own one, just so I could have a whole lot of fun with them, because they are, in fact, mines. They are filled with tons of useful material. Now, that is for the future. For right now, what everybody should be looking for is ways to turn your pretty colored paper of whatever nation you happen to inhabit at the moment into hard commodities, durable commodities like fixing cars, getting better appliances, making needed house repairs. Consumable commodities, building your long-term kitchen pantry, building a garden if you have room, investing in having food around, and wealth building, which means buying silver and gold at your local coin shop or locally to you, preferably, so that you can save your money. Because let's face it, every day it's getting more and more worthless, which is no fun. Yeah, Alex, which is exactly why nobody in their right mind owns a new car. Okay. The goddess owns very old vehicles for a very good reason. And I actually believe that that may be one of the reasons that Obama and that crew decided to do cash for clunkers and get rid of old cars, because they wanted to force people to indebt themselves to get new cars and put money in the automakers' pockets. It didn't exactly work, but then again, no government plan does. And we still can a lot of stuff, Prairie. And yeah, new vehicles track people, and it's ridiculous. You cannot fix them. Never own anything you can't take a wrench to yourself if you can avoid it. In other news, China landed a spacecraft on the far side of the moon to collect samples. The goddess strongly approves of this. We should be going to the moon more often than we do. Alas and alack, not happening these days. Many things that should be happening are not happening these days. And in a few signs of the general instability of the insane asylum that is the modern world, in Spokane, Washington, they painted a crosswalk. They painted a crosswalk with the progress sign. It's not pride anymore, people. It's progress. Get your stuff right here. And people decided to deface it. So they painted it again. And then some teenage kids rented these Lime scooter thingies. And they decided to do burnouts. We're talking little tiny electric scooters that go maybe 15 miles an hour. Okay, if that. We're not talking anything major here. They decided to put some tire tracks on it. So they've all been arrested for felony mischief because while they were putting the tire tracks out there, some folks came out of the local Rainbow Mafia bar and decided to start yelling at them. So they used very bad slurs that related to the type of people that like those kind of flags that begin with the letter F, amongst other things. That's not what they're being charged with. They're being charged with criminal mischief of a felony level, and it's like 5 years in jail plus a huge fine. Yeah. The interesting part of that story is the Lime Scooter Company came out immediately following this and roundly condemned the use of their innocent little electric scooters to engage in this horrifying hate crime. So they have programmed their scooters. So if you try to drive their scooter onto this design painted on the street, the scooter shall immediately slow to a walk and come to a gentle stop. And you will have to get off the scooter and push it to the other side. You know, the goddess has to wonder how many other vehicles, new smart vehicles, have that geofencing capability. The goddess does have to wonder about that, you know. Just saying, that's something that's a little bit bizarre right there. The other thing that was a little bit bizarre is out in the middle of Ohio, there was a woman. I'm using that term. The term is biologically accurate, but it's better than some of the words I can think of in this case. That had been before the court because she was apparently a psychotic, racist, homicidal maniac. And the court didn't bother pressing charges or doing anything important to her, and they let her out. And 3 or 4 days after they let her out, she randomly attacked a mother with a 3-year-old toddler outside a Walmart, I believe it was, and stabbed that little boy to death for no reason whatsoever. It's interesting to note that this chick was walking around in a parking lot with an 8-inch knife out, and people were just filming, and going about their day to day. Well, she had her jury trial, and she was getting the sentencing read today. The father was standing there in the courtroom looking actually a whole lot like a person that's expecting to be sentenced to death, looking like you would expect a criminal to look. Big, bad, sober faced dude, looking like his life is effectively over. The actual criminal was smiling and winking at the camera and really enjoying herself. Yeah, one has to wonder about the kind of judges that let these animals run free on our city streets. And this is getting more prevalent. One really believes, the goddess believes everybody should practice some situational awareness, and it's probably a good idea to um, not be just whipping out a camera and filming people when they're bebopping around with 8-inch knives in Walmart parking lots. I mean, come on now, people. This is getting to be a little radical. And by the way, the other Biden was in court um, on the laptop and gun charges and cocaine charges and all kinds of other charges. And funny enough, his dearly beloved mother, stepmother, don't know which, Dr. Jill, was there every day except one so far. The goddess has to wonder just what kind of a chilling effect that's going to have on the jury, because I doubt the jury is looking at her and saying, oh, what a good mother. I'm pretty sure the jury is looking at her and saying, that's the president's wife. Yeah. Something tells me that the whole two-tier justice thing is going to become a little interesting in this case, because there's a whole lot of people around the country that have loved ones in jail right now for similar or lesser drug charges than Hunter is facing. There's a whole lot of people right now that have relatives and friends and family members in jail for weapons charges that are significantly less problematic than those Hunter's facing. The goddess has to wonder how those families are going to feel if Hunter Biden doesn't end up in the big house. That could be an interesting question right there. Just saying. Hi, Tricky. I mean, just saying. That's the way that's going to go. Things could get very bizarre and unaccountable in that direction. Meanwhile, gold and silver are still on sale. The goddess has been hearing from around the country that premiums are still dropping. As a matter of fact, people are reporting throughout the day on the various silver subs and gold subs on Reddit, various online websites, reputable ones, that are offering, unlimited buffaloes at spot, etc. 99 cents over spot, 89 cents over spot. People have even gotten American Silver Eagles for like $1.50 over spot. There are good deals out there to be found. Again, the goddess will caution you, only deal with reputable metal companies. If you buy at walmart.com, make sure it ships directly from AppNext, because that's the only reputable company that the goddess knows about right now that uses that portal. If you're on eBay, make sure you get to the eBay page for a reputable dealer like AppNext, JD Bullion, SD Bullion, Golden State, whoever, whoever you're choosing here, Money Metals, make sure you get to the eBay page from their website. Okay? because the amount of counterfeiting going on out there right now is just off the freaking scale. And even seasoned metal buyers can get pulled in by some of these people because some of these counterfeiters are getting smarter. They're not advertising the fake American Silver Eagles for $12.99 anymore. They're advertising them for $1 over spot, or they're saying, I really need to sell this to help my family, so I'm selling it for spot. Or, I got these back in the 90s because there are older dates coming out too. I got these and I'm profit taking, so I'll give them to you for spot. You're going to have to start watching your deals very carefully. That's one of the reasons that the goddess says and has always said, shop at your local coin shops, get cash, go to your local coin shop, and do your buying there. It keeps your paper trail at a minimum. You can hold the product in your hand. Most good coin shops will have a Sigma tester or some other way to test so they can test it right in front of you. You can develop a relationship with people. So they will look for things for you. They will call you when they get something cool in. They will give you price breaks when you buy in quantity that they may not give to other people because they see you every damn week. Develop those relationships because those relationships are going to come in handy, you know? And that's the kind of thing that you really want to be able to do because as we see these swings widen, it's going to create a positive feedback loop in the public consciousness. We're already seeing more articles coming out in mainstream media talking about gold, not silver. But more people, when they read those articles and start asking questions, will realize silver is more affordable. We are getting more people in the forums I frequent showing up to ask questions about silver. We're seeing more articles in the mainstream media. We're seeing more commercials on YouTube and elsewhere in social media from companies, everything from the typical companies of selling overpriced gold and silver commemoratives to little old ladies who are not as smart as the goddess to ordinary metals people. We're seeing more YouTube channels about gold and silver stacking and collecting and numismatics and everything else that are beginning to pick up membership and are beginning to get more reach on social media platforms. As those things, Mr. Virtue, I would make relationships more with my local dealers. The only relationship I would have with AppNex is buying their stuff at Walmart.com because that's where it's always the cheapest. They're good about that. Hi, Prairie. Bye-bye. And yeah, there is a whole lot of silver in e-waste. The goddess is going to be working on that this summer. I've got some plans in that regard. We're going to be looking into that idea because I have a few things I want to do. But the thing is, as more of these articles get around and people see the price swings, you're going to get more interest. Some of the people who will have interest are just looking at silver as an investment, but plenty of people who begin buying silver the way you day trade a stock because they're idiots are actually going to get the idea once they get it. That is something we can all work on, is teaching the people we know about things like that. And yes, Mr. Virtue, I have gotten good deals from pawn shops. I have actually seen good deals in my local pawn shop. The best deals I have seen in my local pawn shop tend to be gold and silver wedding rings. They tend to be available usually pretty much at melt. No, you don't want anything with stones in it. If you can get something without stones, get it without stones. But yeah, My pawn shop has customer appreciation days where they have like, uh, you know, 30% off, 25% off, just about everything in the store on a fairly regular basis, about 3 or 4 times a year. And the best silver and gold deal in the whole dang place tends to be old wedding rings. Kind of makes sense, actually, but it just happens to be a thing. Don't rule out any local source. Thrift shops quite often will turn up some interesting stuff in their jewelry cases that can be ridiculously underpriced. I have seen it before. Antique malls. I have seen all kinds of what you could call common flatware that's, you know, low value as an antique, but is decent priced for the sterling silver that it's made out of. These are all things to be considered. And as it becomes harder to control those price swings, there's going to be more interest from the greater world out there, and it's going to create more demand in the retail business. It's going to create more demand. I mean, when I go to my local coin shop these days, usually the gold section is pretty darn thin because everybody's coming in and buying gold. The silver section is beginning to thin out as well because there are some people right now that are profit taking. I have seen some beautiful vintage bars and some beautiful vintage rounds that are in fantastic condition that are selling for generic prices, even though they are collectibles. And I could flip them on eBay, for a 20, 30, 40% profit right away if I wanted to. I can get them at generic prices because the people who had them were holding them since the 70s or whatever. This was in Grandpa's collection. Grandpa got it for $3 an ounce, and he now wants to do some profit taking to pay off some bills. A guy came into our local coin shop last week and sold 1,400 1981 U.S. assay rounds. 1,400 of them. So I got a bunch to go through. Very, very cool. But anyway, that's what you need to be doing. You need to be converting your debt instruments, your currency, into commodities, durable commodities, consumable commodities, wealth building commodities. You want to be getting rid of debt. This is a good time to try to be paying down debt that, if you walk away from it, will be inconvenient for you. By that I mean there are some debts that you know darn well are never going to come back to bite you in the butt. Like if you happen to go to a nonprofit emergency room hospital, your county ER, and they're trying to get 5 grand out of you or something ridiculous like that because you went to the county ER or something or other. They're not going to garnish your salary. They can't mess up your credit rating anymore. There's really not much they can do to you if you tell them, no. And that's the thing. There are going to be some debts that you can walk away from if you absolutely have to, that aren't going to bite you in the butt. There are going to be other debts that if you walk away from them, like mortgage, property taxes, etc., really bad things can ensue. So those are the ones you want to concentrate on paying down, paying off, getting into a place where even if everything goes sideways in your life, you can still find a way to cover that so that you can keep the most important shit. Prioritize where you put your money when it comes to debt. Remember to please, please, please check where your tax status is right now. And as soon as you have completed your obligations for the year to the federal government of your choice, when it comes to your income taxes. Go exempt and stop paying. Don't loan them money. Right now, you need that money to do things with. And don't fall into the one Starbucks a day is not going to change the world. Right now, you really, really do want to be as penny wise as you can be. You really want to put your pennies to work where you can. Because the more unstable things get, the more difficult it's going to be to get a hold of some things. One of them is probably going to be silver and gold. Others may include, but are not limited to, beef, milk, eggs, etc., because, of course, the bird flu that's going to kill the entire planet is apparently on the loose this year. So that is something else to be considered. But in the meantime, it always comes down to the same thing. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. So hold it and own it. Bye bye. Bear, it's time for you to come staggering over here to talk to your peeps.
Okay.
And drink tequila.
Alex says Eva supports right to repair legislation, I bet.
Absolutely.
You win.
Should not have even needed to be a question. That should have been an automatic default.
Hey, Alex. Oh, I haven't heard anything more. Let me write a note. Okay. Hey, Tricky. Tricky's here, little one.
Yeah, I know Tricky.
He said, say hi.
And Tricky, give the babies hugs and kisses.
Just give the kids hugs and kisses. What's new? Anyhow. So, after, believe it or not, I did fall asleep there a little bit. Oh, that reminds me. Vis-a-vis the rat situation, so far it appears it's probably not rats. It's probably mice. Fairly big field mice, but, you know. We saw something that I'd never seen before on the way, when we came back from over in Cardwell. We checked. Oh my goodness. There were 3 mice in that rat trap. Now this was a conventional, old style snap rat trap. And there's 3 mice in there. It's like, wow.
I have pictures to prove it.
Yep. So then we checked the next day, and there was 2 in there. And the last day we were there, yesterday? Yeah, it'd be yesterday. We caught 2 more while we were working. So what the heck? We think we found out where all the rats are generally coming from, the mice, but it's probably going to take a little while to deal with them. So anyhow, it's apparently mice. Well, Travis, with respect to pack rats, I would, work on a method of eliminating them permanently because they're so damn destructive. Um, there's, I know that Lauren basically has traps and he catches them, one at a time as they show up, etc. You can use poisons and such, but the problem with poisons is you wind up with dead carcasses in sometimes rather inconvenient locations. But yeah, you really, really want to get rid of stuff like that whenever possible.
There's going to be a lot more because of that bag.
So, I say it's one of those things where they're just so annoying, so destructive. I know one thing so far as I know, the best bait is peanut butter. Works really well. Uh, oh, that's good, Brian. Well, you see, that's why it's good to be a world reowned uh, uh, celebrity. You know. Oh goodness, sorry about being out of it, folks. Oh, I dealt with that more than once. Oh, honey bunny. Yeah, they one time when I was at Chem Gold, early '80s, we were getting our cyanide via truck in 200-pound uh, drums, about this big and yay high sort of thing. And they had some granular. You haven't got to see it yet, huh? Well, Lars, I'm shocked at this lack of loyalty. But anyhow, um, they had a barrel that got messed up somehow, and while it was parked over at the truck stop in town, somebody noticed there's this barrel that says sodium cyanide and a little pile of cyanide there. And people got freaked out, which is perfectly understandable. But yeah, they didn't realize that it's not their job to realize it. Little duct tape and a little bit of bleach, and you can deal with something like that fairly easily. That's why that package I sent to Chris with the glycine had it's Dave Turin's Backyard Gold. I think it's episode 8, but the title is Montana Hard Rock Heaven. Oh no, they were steel, honey bunny. Somebody twinged it a little bit with a forklift or something. Yeah, no, these were corrugated steel drums. But anyhow, so yeah, HDPE is pretty tough, pretty inert. So anyhow, yeah, that was kind of fun. Let's see. Anything else? First of all, any questions anywhere or anything? Cool, Brian. Yeah, it's pretty toxic, but only if you get it inside you. It's not like lead or mercury where it stays there. Sublethal dose is rapidly metabolized. Um, but anyhow, I was asleep long enough. My eyes are out of whack now. One thing that I wanted to mention as we're talking milling stuff up there. There we go. When you are designing your mill, again, the smaller you are, the more simple you like to keep things. Getting stuff from one stage of the mill to another is gravity. If you got a hillside or whatever, that's perfectly good. If you take a lot of stuff, like I know Brian's mill has a few transfer conveyors. The what do you call it? Mount Baker Mill has a number of hoppers, conveyors, feeders, etc. All of those are expense, power, maintenance. Okay. So whatever you can do to minimize those things, those parts, will save you trouble in the long run. And as such, see where you can do. That's why the bob mill that I designed, it feeds itself and it blows it out. So up to the point where the material's at the mill, Eva's, then Eva gets it, and I mean literally, she's not breaking a sweat at all, and that's because it was designed that way. Okay, that's the way it is. You design your mill to minimize the moving parts, use gravity and things like that wherever you can, because gravity doesn't cost money, doesn't require maintenance. It's always there. That's why most of those old mills are built on hillsides. Big mills are usually built on hillsides too, because they don't want to have to use energy to get the material from one step to another. They can just let it flow downhill. I'm sure there's a joke there somewhere, but it does a real good job. Very, very cheap, very reliable. And also in a case like this, you want to make sure that you don't have a 10,000 ton an hour pulverizer fed by a 5,000 ton an hour jaw crusher. Size things appropriately. Generally, put a bottleneck at the high end, and then everything else down the bottom can't get screwed up. Don't tell Newsom that one, Lars. Possibly, depending upon what you need. But again, it's better if you can use gravity if you can design it. So that's what you try and do. There was something I was thinking of. Yeah, I said there's all kinds of ways of doing stuff, but some of them are a lot cheaper and more reliable than others. Jaw crushers tend to be difficult to restart when they stop in the middle of operation. Okay. There are some devices which can, go cattywampus with less effect than others. For example, that impact mill, worst case scenario, you get a plug, you don't notice it, it fills up, it loads up and bogs down. Take four bolts loose, clean it out, back in business less than 5 minutes. On the other hand, by the way, I'll have to be back in just a second. Anyhow, yeah, pretty much, Mr. Virtue. This really applies to situations like what we have, where we're using gasoline powered engines to run things. And as such, it's easy to run out of gas. Now, if you're running stuff through the RC46 and you run out of gas, you got to open it up and completely and utterly clean out the jaws, which are very difficult to do, bit difficult and time consuming. I mean, you can't have a little pebble in there and get it restarted. So it's very sensitive to stoppage. You would want to make absolutely sure that your system is robust enough so that doesn't happen too often. For example, don't underpower your jaw crusher. Make sure you got plenty of power so a big hard rock doesn't just stop it, because that would be a real problem. On the other hand, say the impact mill, if you run it out of gas, not a big problem. That it happened with Eva because when I started it was a little cold and I had left the choke partially on when I brought it up to speed. Not her fault. And she did exactly the right thing. When it stopped, she stopped feeding ore into it and everything like that. And so all I had to do was fill the gas tank, fire it up, back in business. So that was no big deal. But if that had happened on the RC46, oh yeah, I've done that before. It is a pain in the ass to clear out. If you're building a mill from scratch or whatever, design in, if there's something like a jaw crusher, can you get to it? If you have a failure, say your generator stops or the circuit breaker goes or whatever, how tough is it going to be to get to that and fix it? If you can't, get to it easy, you might want to see what you can do to make your design a little more failure tolerant. But as I say, this is some of the other considerations you need to think of. And if there's a failure, what's the first thing you need to do? For example, I told Eva very simply, if there's any question, if the sluice stops running or this, that, first thing you do is stop feeding ore into the impact mill. Know exactly what you need to do if there's a failure. Usually, if there's any way you can stop feeders easily, that's the first thing you want to do. Stop feeding material into the system. When you've got something like our little impact mill there, if it starts loading up, then you would notice a decrease in the engine RPM first. We have a methodology. I mean, we got that little vibratory feeder, but I have to set up a hopper, set up the feeder, etc. And then you'd have to be manually dialing it, which is not horrible, but nevertheless, when you can replace it with Eva, that's really, really versatile. If you're going to do automatic, a feeder would be fine. But if you really wanted to get most efficient, you'd have a feeder hooked up to the engine RPM. So as the engine RPM reduces, the feeder would reduce also until the engine RPM comes up. And you get it to where you got a feedback like that for maximum efficiency. But, it's simple. Again, low throughput, low cost. Simplicity is good. Oh, I can tell I'm pretty much not thinking too clearly here. Does anyone have any questions or anything? There's only so much I can do, little one. I just woke up. Literally, I was asleep during your thing. Okay. So let's say, do we have any more questions or subjects or anything like that which I can focus on? I'd probably do better. Uh, well, I don't see anything. You can give it a shot, Lars. I suspect you're more likely to ask me questions until I become unintelligible rather than I pass out. But you can give it a shot. Absolutely. So, oh, by the way, Lars, you being a rocket scientist and everything, what did you think of that starship burning up on reentry? And it maintained control all the way to the soft landing in the ocean, even though pieces were burning off of it. That was amazing. Oh, I couldn't believe that. But they managed it. They really need to have something to, you know, like race cars do, where when the camera lens gets messed up, they just, move a new aperture over basically. Yeah, it was. That was really amazing. We're going to have to go down there sometime to watch one of those, especially if they actually manage to pull it off and start landing it back on the tower. That's going to be a heck of a show to have this gigantic thing take off and then part of it come back about, what is it, 10, 15 minutes later. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, the Boeing Starliner wasn't quite as smooth. Of course, it's new, but I'm just waiting for a little more feedback, honey bunny. But yeah, the Starliner is typical government job, behind schedule, doesn't work too smooth, etc. SpaceX, it's a little bit behind schedule, may not work too well, but what the heck? They don't care. Give them a good show, figure out what doesn't work, iterate. Oh, oh. Well, I don't see any new questions or anything. Thank you for all the help, Brian. Ooh, how many feet are in a furlong? Let's see if Eva knows this one. I don't.
No clue.
She says no clue. I'm not sure what number that is. But how many, Lars? I would guess it's a couple thousand feet, 2 or 3 thousand. Eva does now. She's very proud of that.
What?
Honey Bunny says, I don't have long fur. How many feet? Are you talking cubic feet or how many feet in a cubic meter, Tricky? You trying to trip me up there? It would be 660 feet in a furlong, huh? Cool. Wonder where that got derived from. All righty, Mr. Virtue. I agree. I think I better call it a night then. Get some rest.
Get some rest. You're incoherent.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll get that next 200 pounds done and more cleaning out and some playing games with the gravity concentrates tomorrow. Got lots of fun stuff to do. But y'all take care. Go ahead, honey bunny. I need to get it next time. I need to get a picture of Eva holding a baby so you can just see the smile on her face. My goodness. Oh, she does love babies. But we have to, we had a good trip. It was productive. And I say, I always like it when I can help someone and learn some new stuff. So it was productive all around. A little bit warm for up here. Good night, Lars. You take care. Oh,
That's part of your problem. I think you're dehydrating yourself.
I might have gone dehydrated, but I've been drinking a lot. Yeah, Tricky.
Not having enough electrolytes and you're being heat stroke.
I don't know. I did lose a few pounds.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we'll let you know next week, and happy prospecting and keep it safe out there.